Chapter 20. Boom, boom, boom. Ben couldn't believe what Granny had just said. There was no way he would risk stealing the crown jewels, only to put them back the very next night. But they're worth millions, billions even, he complained. I know, so we'd definitely get caught if we tried to sell them, replied Granny. But, no buts, boy. We put them back the next night. Do you know how I evaded prison all these years? I never sold a thing. I just did it for the buzz. But you kept them, though, said Ben. Even if you didn't sell them, you've got all those jewels in your biscuit tin. Granny blinked. Yes. Well, I was young and foolish then, she said. I have learned since that it is wrong to steal. And if you need to understand that too, and you need to understand that too. She gave him a fierce look. Ben squirmed. I do. Of course I do. That's a brilliant plan you've put together, Ben. Honestly it is, but those jewels don't belong to us, do they? No, said Ben. No, they don't. He felt a tiny bit ashamed now that he'd been so horrified at the idea of giving back the jewels. And don't forget that every policeman in the country, maybe even the world, will be looking for the crown jewels. They'll have all of Scotland Yard after us. If we were found with them, we'd be thrown into prison for the rest of our lives. That might not be so long for me, but for you it could be 70 or 80 years. You're right, said Ben. And the Queen seems like such a nice old dear. We are around the same age, actually. I would hate to upset her. Me too, murmured Ben. He'd seen the Queen on the news loads of times, and she seemed like a nice old lady, smiling and waving at everyone from the back of her giant pram. Let's do it for the thrill. Agreed? Agreed, said Ben. When can we do it? It will have to be a Friday night when Mum and Dad take me to stay at yours. Did the doctor say when you'd be out of hospital? Oh yes, he did. He said I could leave any time. Fantastic! But we need to do it very soon. How about next Friday? Isn't that too soon? Not at all. Your plan seems very well thought out, Ben. Thank you, said Ben, beaming. It was the first time ever that he felt like he had made a grown-up proud of him. When I get out of here, I'll get on to pinching the equipment we need. Now run along, Ben, and I will see you next Friday night at the usual time. Ben pulled back the curtain. Mr. Parker, Granny's nosy neighbour, was standing right there. Startled, Ben took a couple of steps back towards the bed and quickly shoved Plumbing Weekly up the back of his jumper. What are you doing here? Asked Ben. Hoping to see me take a bed bath, no doubt, said Granny. Ben chuckled. Mr. Parker scrambled for words. No, Matron! Matron! Hollered Granny. Wait, said Mr. Parker, panicking. I'm sure I heard one of you talking about the crown jewels. It was too late. The matron, who was an unusually tall lady with very big feet, clomped down the ward at speed. Yes, asked the matron. Is something the matter? This man was spying at me through the curtain, said Granny. Were you? Demanded matron, eyeballing Mr. Parker. Well, I heard that they were, whined Mr. Parker. Last week he spied on my Granny doing her naked yoga, offered Ben. Matron's face turned puce with horror. Get out of my ward at once, you filthy little swine, she screamed. Humiliated, Mr. Parker backed away from the terrifying matron and scuttled out of the ward. He paused at the swing doors and yelled back to Granny and Ben, You haven't seen the last of me, before rushing out. Please let me know if that man comes back, said Matron, her face returning to a more normal shade. I will, replied Granny, before Matron returned to her duties. He could have heard everything, hissed Ben. Maybe, replied Granny, but I think Matron scared him off for good. I hope so, said Ben. Ben was very worried about this unfortunate development. Do you still want to go through with it? Asked the old lady. Ben had that feeling you have when you're on a roller coaster and it's slowly making its way up the track. You want to get off and you want to stay on. Dread and delight all rolled into one. Yes, he said. Hurrah, said Granny, giving Ben a big smile. Ben turned to leave, then turned around. I love you, Granny, he said. And I love you too, little Benny, said Granny with a wink. Ben winced. He had a gangster granny now, and that was great, but he was going to have to teach her to just call him Ben. Ben ran along the corridors, his heart beating incredibly fast. Boom, boom, boom. He was electrified with excitement. This 11-year-old boy, who had never done anything notable in his life, except once been sick on his friend's head on the big wheel at the local fun fair, was going to take part in the most daring robbery the world has ever known. He ran outside the hospital and began fumbling with the keys to unlock his bike from the railing. Then, looking up, he saw something unbelievable. It was Granny. That in itself was not unusual, but this was. Granny was abseiling down the side of the hospital. She had tied a number of her bed sheets together and was lowering herself at speed down the side of the building. Ben couldn't believe his eyes. He knew his granny was a proper gangster, but this was off the scale. "Granny, what on earth are you doing?" shouted Ben across the car park. "The lift wasn't working, dear. See you next Friday. Don't be late," she shouted as she reached the ground, leaped on her mobility scooter and roared off. Well, word of home. Never had a week passed so slowly. Ben spent all week waiting for Friday to come. Every minute, every hour, every day seemed like an eternity. It was strange having to pretend he was just another ordinary boy when really he was one of the greatest criminal masterminds of all time. Finally, Friday evening came. There was a knock on Ben's bedroom door. Rat-tat-tat. "Well, are you ready, son?" said Dad. "Yeah," said Ben, trying to act as innocent as possible, which is actually quite hard when you are feeling extremely guilty. "You don't need to pick me up too early in the morning tomorrow. Granny and I normally play Scrabble until quite late." "You won't be playing Scrabble, son," said Dad. "No?" "No, son. You won't be going to Granny's tonight at all." "Oh, no," said Ben. "Is she back in hospital?" "No, she's not." Ben sighed with relief, then felt a prickle of anxiety. "So why am I not going to her house?" The plan was in place, and there was no time to lose. "Because," said Dad, "tonight is the Under-12 Dancing Championships. At last it's your big moment to shine." Chapter 21. The Tap Shoe. Ben sat quite silently in the back of the little brown car in his love bomb outfit. "I hope you didn't forget about the competition, Ben," said Mum as she fixed her makeup in the passenger seat, her lipstick accidentally scrawling across her face as they went around a corner. "No, of course not, Mum." "Don't worry, son," continued Dad as he proudly drove his son to dance competition immortality. "You've done so much training up in your bedroom. I know you'll get top marks from all the judges. Straight 10s. "What about Granny? Won't she be expecting me?" said Ben anxiously. Tonight was supposed to be the night that they stole the crown jewels, but instead he was on his way to take part in a dance competition, despite never having danced a step in his life. For the last 2 weeks, he had avoided thinking about the dance competition, but now the time had come. It was really going to happen. He was going to have to dance a solo number, which he hadn't prepared, in front of an entire theatre full of people. "Oh, don't worry about Granny," said Mum. "She doesn't know what day it is." She laughed as the car stopped suddenly at a red light and the mascara splattered over her forehead. They arrived at the town hall. Ben saw a rushing river of multicoloured lycra making its way into the building. If anyone at school found out he'd entered, he would never live this down. The bullies would have all the ammunition they would need to make his life hell forever. And what's more, he hadn't rehearsed his dance. Not even once. He didn't have a clue what he was going to do on stage. This was a competition to find the best junior dancers in the local area. There was a prize for the best couple, best solo female, and best solo male. If you won here, you would get the chance to compete for your country, and if you won there, for your country. This was the first step on the road to international dance superstardom, and the host for the evening was none other than Strictly Star's dancing heartthrob and his mum's favourite, Flavio Flavioli. "It's wonderful to see so many beautiful ladies here tonight," he purred in his Italian accent. Flavio looked even more shiny in real life. His hair was slicked back, his teeth were dazzling white, and his outfit was as tight as cling film. "Now are we ready to rumba?" The crowd all screamed, "Yes!" "Flavio can't hear you." I said, are you ready to rumba? Yes, they all screamed again, a little louder than before. Ben was listening nervously backstage. He heard one woman's voice screech, I love you, Flavio. It sounded suspiciously like his mum. Ben looked around the dressing room. It might as well have been the convention of the most annoying children in the world. They looked so unbearably precocious, adorned in these ridiculously garish lycra outfits, smeared in fake tan, and with pearly white teeth so bright they could be seen from outer space. Ben looked anxiously at his watch, knowing he was going to be terribly late to meet his granny. He waited as he over-made-up quick-stepped, jived and waltzed, Viennese waltzed, tangoed, foxtrotted and cha-cha-cha'd. Finally, Ben's turn came. He stood in the wings as Flavio announced him. Now it's time for a local boy who's going to delight us all tonight with a solo dance piece. Please welcome Ben. Flavio glided off the stage as Ben plodded on, his lycra love bomb outfit riding uncomfortably up his bottom. Ben stood alone in the middle of the dance floor. A spotlight shone on him. The music started up. He was praying for some sort of escape from this. He would have been happy with anything at all, including a fire alarm, an earthquake, World War III, another ice age, a deadly swarm of killer bees, a meteor from outer space hitting the earth and spinning it off its axis, a tidal wave, Flavio Flavioli being attacked by hundreds of flesh-eating zombies, a hurricane or tornado. Ben didn't really know the difference, but either would do. Ben being abducted by aliens and not returning to the earth for 1,000 years. Dinosaurs returning to the earth through some kind of time or space portal and smashing through the roof, devouring everyone inside. A volcano erupting, though annoyingly there didn't seem to be any volcanoes nearby. An attack of giant slugs. Even an attack of medium-sized slugs would do. Ben wasn't fussy. Any of the above would have sufficed. The music played for a while, and Ben realised he hadn't moved his body yet. He looked over at his parents, who beamed with pride, seeing their only child centre stage at last. He looked at the wings, where the ever-smiling Flavio was giving him an encouraging grin. Please make the ground open up now. It didn't. There was no choice but to do something. Anything. Ben started moving his legs, then his arms, then his head. None of these parts of his body moved in time or sequence, and for the next 5 minutes he threw his body around the dance floor in a style that can only be called unforgettable. As much as you might want to forget it, you can't. Ben tried a jump at the end, just as the music stopped, and he fell to the floor with a thud. There was silence. Deafening silence. Then Ben could hear the sound of one pair of hands clapping. He looked up. It was his mum. Then another pair of hands joined in. It was his dad. For a few seconds he thought it might be one of these moments you see in a film when the underdog triumphs against all the odds. That soon everyone in the hall would be on their feet, cheering and applauding this local boy who had at last made his loved ones proud and at the same time reinvented dancing forever. The end. Well, no, that's not what happened. After a few moments, his parents felt embarrassed to be the only people applauding and stopped. Flavio returned to the stage. Well, that was... For the first time, the Italian heartthrob seemed lost for words. Judges, can we have your scores for Ben, please? 0, said the first. 0, 0. Only one more judge to go. Could Ben make it 4 zeros? But the final judge must have felt sorry for the sweaty little boy in front of her, who'd shamed his family for generations with his epic display of talentlessness. She shuffled her scoring paddles under the desk. 1, she announced. There were loud boos and jeers from the audience, so she corrected her score. I am sorry, I mean 0, she said, holding up her original choice of paddle. Slightly disappointing scores from the judges there, said Flavio, still trying hard to smile. But young Ben, all is not lost. As the only boy who entered the solo male category tonight, you are therefore the winner. May I present you with this solid plastic statuette? Flavio picked up a cheap-looking trophy of a dancing boy and presented it to Ben. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, a round of applause for Ben. There was silence then. Even Mum and Dad didn't dare to clap. Then boos started, and then cheers and catcalls, shouts of "Shame on you!" "No!" and "Fix!" Flavio's perfect smile began to crack. He leaned down to Ben and whispered in his ear, "You better get out of here before you get lynched." At that exact moment, a tap shoe was thrown from the back of the audience. It flew at speed through the air. It was probably aimed at Ben, but instead hit Flavio right between the eyes, and he fell to the ground unconscious. "Time to make my excuses and leave," thought Ben.